How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video here on the Nat Automotive YouTube channel, and in today's video I'm going to be working on my C5 Corvette project. I'm in the process of trying to get the car registered and for it to be street legal, and in order to do that I need to fix the front bumper, fix part of the front crash bar, and fix the hood. So today I'm going to be tackling the front bumper by plastic welding it, so stay tuned. If you guys are new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. If you like what you see in this video, definitely consider subscribing and checking out a lot of the other automotive related content on my YouTube channel. But like I said, in today's video, I'm going to be tackling the front bumper part of the Corvette project because it's got some decent cracks and just damage to it from the accident when I bought it at the auction. So for those that don't know, I bought a red C5 Corvette back at the end of last year at an online auction. It was involved in a minor front end accident, so I'm in the process of fixing it up so I can register it and enjoy it before it gets torn down as a street legal go-kart. So just to show you guys here, I got the bumper up on the sawhorses here that I got from Harbor Freight, and you can see a majority of the damage is right about here. If I can get it in better lighting. I'm going to move the bumper so that it's in the complete sun so it's easier to see. Okay, so now that we got the bumper in the shade, you can a little bit more easily see the damage here, and you can see that a car came on the driver's side of the car and kind of went at an angle and up and over the car, and so it cracked his bumper up pretty good and affected the crash bar on the front end of the car here accordingly. So I bought a replacement section off eBay, but that'll be for another video. So in today's video, we're going to be tackling plastic welding this bumper because you can do so with a plastic welding iron, which is essentially a modified soldering iron. And because this is a polyurethane bumper, it's pretty easy to do that. So you can see there's a decent crack that starts here and travels all the way down and actually continues along this like license plate cutout here. So it stops about there but then goes all the way around to this side here. And then we've got another section here, a little bit of a hole in the bumper, and then this kind of just damage here with this one piece that's pushed in and raised out. So we got some pretty decent cracking here. Now I am by no means an expert at this. This is going to be my first time trying plastic welding, and because this car is eventually going to get torn down as a street legal go-kart, just for the sake of registering it and enjoying it as a regular Corvette for a while, I'm just trying to fix it so that it's good enough to put back on the car to be safe to drive on the road. So it's a good experience, an opportunity for me to kind of just learn plastic welding and just give it a try. I did quite a bit of research on YouTube at kind of the tips and tricks and the fundamentals of plastic welding. So in this video I'm going to kind of go over it with you guys and just kind of share my experience as I try and fix this thing, and some of the things that I learned, so that if you guys have to repair a bumper in the future, you might be able to take what you learned from this video. So you can see this tab here is also cracked, but usually with plastic welding you start from the back side and you reinforce it from behind, and then you can work on the front as well. So I think one of the first things I'm going to try and do before I actually get out the welding iron here and start tackling this is I'm going to try and line up some of these cracks a little bit better. You can see here a little bit that this side is pushed down and this side is raised up. So I'm going to try and get these as level as possible. Same here. And then what a lot of people will do to hold them in place is either put some tape over it, or usually they use some sort of tape, like duct tape, and because you're going to eventually have to sand this down, you don't have to worry about adhesive from the duct tape. So I'm going to try and just line up these cracks a little bit better before we tackle the welding part. You can see here I got this crack lined up a lot better than how it was before. It's almost completely flush now with some minor, raised portions right about here. This one is a little bit more hard to press back in place. There's a pretty big overlap between this side of the plastic and here where the crack splits. So what a lot of people will do sometimes is, just because you don't have to worry about obviously affecting the paint because you're going to sand this down anyways, you can just heat it up with a heat gun to kind of get the plastic a little bit more flexible, and it might help to get some of these cracks fixed back in place and to try and smooth out some of these raised and lowered portions here. So you can see that there's a pretty big hump right here, and then it kind of goes into a low spot here. So hopefully with the heat gun we can kind of get this as flat as possible and get this crack to sit flush with most of the other part of the bumper. Alright, so I had pretty good success with getting most of the cracks lined up here by just heating it up a little bit. So I got this one lined up just by force itself, and then this one over here, you can see that I used the heat gun to kind of give it some heat to make the plastic a little bit more flexible to push back in place. Now the only thing is, now that I got the cracks lined up for the most part, there is still a considerable amount of waviness to the bumper, so you can see that. Now, I am not a body shop guy by any means. I have pretty much zero experience at body shop work, so I am going to try and just use the heat gun again to get this as you know, kind of smooth and level as possible, and we'll just see kind of how it goes. Like I said, this is my first time doing it, so it's going to be a little bit of trial and error, and try and just get the best result that I can. Okay, so I had some minor success with heating up the bumper and trying to manipulate it to get it a little bit more level and less wavy, but that is probably the part of this where we're going to get this as smooth as possible. It's probably going to happen in part 2 of this bumper repair, where I do like Bondo repair, because it's going to be really hard to get that all level. And I think what I'm going to do next to kind of give us a better idea of what we're working with here is sand down a lot of this paint here and scuffed up area with my DA sander, and then that way it might help get us a better idea of what we're working with, and then I'll jump into the actual plastic welding. Alright, so after doing a little bit of initial sanding with the DA sander, you can definitely see where the high spots are, because that's obviously where the paint got eaten off the quickest. So our high spots are here and here, but it did help to kind of smooth everything out and get things a little bit better lined up. So I think what I'm going to do now is just kind of give us a little bit of a second go here with the sanding, and then we'll flip this guy over and start using the welding kit. Alrighty, so after a little bit of further sanding here, we got this surface as smooth as possible. It at least helped to level out some of the parts of the crack that I couldn't get to sit back in flush, as well as other parts. So that was good, kind of just helped level it out to some degree. So I sanded it, wiped it down, so now there's no dust on it. So now what I'm going to do is start laying some tape over the crack so that it helps to keep it as aligned as possible when we flip this bumper over to do the actual welding. So normally I wouldn't recommend duct tape on painted surfaces, but since this is going to get primered over and everything, I don't think it should be an issue. You want something that's definitely going to be strong enough to hold the bumper together, because it'll probably be flexing around when you're moving it and things like that. That part's all taped up now, the main crack here. The tricky part that I'm going to try and do next is try and tape this here as the crack runs along this part change where this groove is, where the license plate usually goes. I want this to try and sit a little bit closer as where it's now. You can kind of see there's actually a little bit of a gap. You can see some light through there. I want to get that a little bit closer if I can, so I'm going to try and maybe line this on this side with some tape around the perimeter here of that to get this as close as possible. Alright, so we're losing daylight here. I'm going to do my best to use the flashlight to keep this inside of the bumper illuminated to show you guys. But the first step in any kind of plastic welding repair is on the back side. You want to kind of prep the crack to receive the plastic weld by either using a Dremel tool or an angle grinder to kind of groove out the crack. So you want to go along the length of the crack here, follow it, and use your angle grinder to kind of give it a groove. And that, in a sense, gives you better weld penetration. Like if you're talking with conventional welding, you want to drill out that groove or grind out that groove so that the weld goes deeper into the plastic and it's not just a surface weld, because that'll definitely crack when this thing flexes, because these polyurethane bumpers are made to flex a little bit and expand and contract with hot and cold temperatures. You want a strong weld or else the crack's just going to happen again. And another thing that you can do at the beginning here is take a small drill bit and find the point where the crack stops, and you want to just drill a small hole at the end of the crack. Because the ends of the cracks are stress concentrations, when there's flexing in the bumper, there is a greater chance for the crack to propagate and grow if you don't drill out the end. So you do your best to try and find the ends of the crack. So like there's one here, one right about here, and just drill out a hole, because then it decreases that stress concentration and makes it less likely that the crack will grow even after the repair is finished. So that's when the next step is going to be grooving out the cracks here and then just drilling some small holes at the ends where the cracks stop at the moment. Okay, so I drilled out about 5 or 6 holes based on where I could find the ends of the cracks where the damage is, and that just, like I said, helps to decrease the stress concentration by making it such a sharp, instead of such a sharp and abrupt stop to the crack, it just kind of broadens it out with that hole. So once you do that, then you are ready to kind of groove out a slight bit with your angle grinder or Dremel tool. Dremel tool is preferred, but all I got is an angle grinder right now. And you can just kind of use that edge of a grinding disc and cut out a small channel. Nothing too crazy. You don't want to go through the other side of the bumper, but just enough to kind of give the weld a little bit more to penetrate and grab onto. Alrighty, so took a quick break to get some dinner and also to get the proper tool. Dug out my Dremel tool here. I tried using the angle grinder to groove out the crack to get good weld penetration, but with the grinding disc, you just couldn't get that V or U-shaped groove that you need to get the good weld penetration. So I got the Dremel tool out and put this kind of like bit on here, and that'll give us the good shape that we need to get that groove before we start plastic welding. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then we can start laying out the mesh material for the welding. Alright, so used the Dremel tool to cut out, or kind of just ream out a U-groove. It's pretty tough, to keep it in a straight line and follow the crack, so I did the best I could. I did it for that one up there and down here as well. But at least that's going to give you a little bit better weld penetration than just welding the crack by itself. So I might try and ream it out a little bit more, and then we'll go ahead and get into the plastic welding. Okay, so the plastic welding kit that I got is just the standard one from Harbor Freight here. Runs about 16 bucks. You get your welding iron, which is basically just a soldering iron with a flat triangular shaped end to it. You get some wire mesh, you get some fiber reinforced plastic rod here, a brass brush which you could use to rough up the plastic, and then your little stand there to hold the to hold the iron. So the first step that you want to do here for plastic welding is you want to take this wire mesh and you want to cut it to size to use it along the cracks, because this wire mesh is essentially going to reinforce your weld, just like how rebar reinforces concrete. This will give the weld that you apply a much better structural properties to prevent it from cracking again in the same spot. So what you want to do, you want to shoot for, is about what I've heard from watching other videos and reading online. You want to go about a 1/2 inch on each side of the crack along the length of the crack, so you can cut your pieces accordingly and do it that way. So we're going to start here by doing this piece, and we'll just kind of slowly, cut the pieces of mesh with the scissors, and just slowly melt the mesh into the bumper here. Okay, so I got my piece of mesh cut out here, again about 1 inch total in width, so that it can span about a 1/2 inch on each side of the crack. And then what you're going to do here at the first step, now that you got the iron hot, is just going to start slowly pressing the wire mesh into the bumper. And our iron might not be hot enough, it might still take a few minutes to get to full temp. One thing I wanted to point out while I'm waiting for the iron to heat up more is I actually think this split here where the license plate frame area is molded into the bumper, I think this is naturally split from the factory, because it's a pretty clean cut right here. If you can see that on camera, I don't know how that comes across, but the bigger thing is you can see that paint was sprayed in here. So when they spray the bumper at the factory, paint got in here somehow. So I think this split is natural, unless this bumper was sprayed after, if there was a front end accident before. But I think from the factory, that's how this bumper is. It has this natural split here. So I think I'm going to leave that as is. One thing I should also note too is it's important to have some adequate circulation when you're doing this, because it's going to make a little bit of smoke when you're melting the plastic. So make sure you're having some circulation to get that stuff out of there while you're working on this. But I think the welding iron's hot enough now, so we can start melting this mesh in. Alrighty, so I don't know if you guys saw what was just going on there, but when I was trying to lay the mesh over the crack and melt the mesh into the plastic of the bumper, nothing was really happening, and I was only getting a little bit of smoke. I couldn't, because that's the first step, is you take your mesh, you lay it over the crack, and kind of embed the mesh into the bumper plastic by melting the plastic from the bumper by itself. And then once you do that, then you go over it with the filler rod and kind of cover it and smooth it over. But nothing was really happening when I was putting the iron down, and when I would touch the iron directly to the bumper plastic itself, I would just get a ton of smoke, and it didn't really look like the plastic was melting. It actually looked like it was burning. So that told me right away, you know what? I bet this is a thermoset plastic. I've done a lot of research in grad school. That's one of my specializations in grad school, is polymer research. And so I know a lot about polymers and plastics, and there's two main types of plastics. There's thermosets and there's thermoplastics. Thermoplastics are like your typical plastics that can be melted once, remelted again, shaped again, stuff like that. Thermosets, on the other hand, are more like two-part epoxies, where a lot of the times like a chemical reaction occurs, and you get these things called cross-linked bonds, and that actually prevents the plastic from being remelted. It just burns when you heat it up again. So the plastic itself definitely looked like it was just burning. I thought, based on my research, that the Corvette bumper was a thermoplastic polyurethane, but there's so many different kinds of polyurethane and so many different variations of each type of plastic based on the manufacturer, the raw material, and everything. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly what type of plastic you're working with. So yeah, unfortunately I don't think plastic welding is going to work on this bumper, just because you can't remelt this thermoset bumper. It's just going to burn. And So that's kind of a bummer. I'm gonna have to regroup here and rethink, but what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use an epoxy, and I'm gonna repair this using an epoxy. I'll still use the mesh and embed the mesh into the epoxy when I glue it. I could theoretically just use the filler rod and cover it with the mesh and, you know, seal that onto the bumper, but it's not welding it, so you're likely gonna crack the bumper again when a little bit of flex is introduced to the bumper. So that's a bummer, but I'll show you guys a close-up of what I was doing, and you know, you'll see how the plastic was just burning rather than melting. So I don't know how well that comes across on camera here. I did put a little bit of filler rod right here, so that's the part that's really the shiny black. But all this around the edge here, you can kind of see there's this brown residue. That's usually what happens when a plastic burns, is you get this kind of oily looking residue. So that's definitely signs that I'm pretty sure that this is a thermoset and it was just burning instantly when I put the welding iron on it. So that's unfortunate. You know, because of that, it's not going to remelt the plastic, so you're not going to get a solid weld and bond between, you know, the bumper plastic and the filler rod and the mesh. So eventually it would just crack again. So that's why I think I'm going to have to go with the epoxy approach to repair this bumper. So just to show you guys exactly what I was talking about, I was messing with this filler rod piece that I melted onto this bumper, and it just goes to show that you really need compatible plastics in order to do plastic welding right, because if you don't, this will just peel right off. So there is clearly no bond at all between the filler rod and the bumper itself, so it's just incompatible plastics, which is why we're going to have to take the epoxy approach. So since I took a good amount of time prepping the bumper today, sanding it and getting it ready to plastic weld it, I think I'll split this video into two parts here. So essentially the bumper repair is going to be a 3-part video. This video is the prep, and then the next video will be me doing the epoxy base repair on the bumper, and then the third video will be doing Bondo and more bodywork stuff, and then primering the bumper. So that'll be the next video once I figure out exactly what material I'm going to go with to fix the bumper. So if you guys have any recommendations on good 2-part epoxies to use for bumper repair on some sort of polyurethane bumper, I'm gonna have to dig a little bit deeper and see maybe exactly what type of plastic this is, but clearly it's not a thermoplastic, it's a thermoset for sure. So that's the route I'm gonna have to take. So I hope you guys at least enjoyed watching me try and plastic weld today, but it is an adventure, like I said, trying it for the first time, so it's a great learning experience. So I hope you guys learned something too. If you guys have any comments or questions, leave them below and I'll be happy to answer them. If you haven't already, definitely hit that subscribe button, because there's a lot more really cool videos on the Corvette to come, and the go-kart. Lots of videos I have in the queue. I'm just up to my eyes in grad school thesis work right now, but hopefully that'll lighten up in the coming weeks here. So thanks again, guys, and I will see you in the next one.